Sometimes life seems really long, doesn't it? Ugh. So here we are in the messy middle. Beginnings are fun, endings are great, long slog through the middle. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're building, even if it's going to the gym and building your health. Shortcuts do not work. So I was thinking about that this morning. We're in Matthew chapter 4 today, and this is the temptations of Jesus out in the wilderness. But I was thinking about, we all go through some iteration of this. We'd all like to avoid it. And what the devil really offered was shortcuts. Shortcuts aren't really shortcuts, they're a long cut. Take you twice as long, and you usually don't get where you're going. In the case of Jesus, it was critical to avoid the shortcut. I often wonder sometimes if he was actually categorizing his temptation for us when he talked about the sower sows the word, and there's 3 types of basically downfalls: the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and pride of life. And I was wondering if you could categorize the temptation in the desert as far as those 3 categories. But I think for each of us that has a calling, we keep going through it. And it's to make sure it's like final exams, so you're ready to go on to the next level. When you're rebuilding your health, you don't go to the gym and go from 2 pounds to 25 pounds. You have to work up to it. The old timers used to say, new level, new devil. But I think it's just that the temptations are making sure and strengthening what you've got so you don't screw up later in a big way. Sometimes I think it's not a good thing to grow up too fast. You just don't have the strength behind it to hold the structure. But anyway, I was thinking about these 3 temptations, and the first one, is, let's see now, he was hungry. So that says toward the end of the fast, I was actually entering into starvation, because in the middle of a fast, you're not hungry. So I think the temptation was to satisfy a legitimate need in his own strength. And how often does that happen to me? Uh, being so unexpectedly retired, you think, should I go back to work or not? And I really struggled with that. And for me, I felt that the answer was no. That's more important that I spend the time with you and what I'm building in my own life at home. But boy, that was hard. So do I satisfy a legitimate need in my own strength, on my own timing, to satisfy myself? For example, if I had a ton of money, would I even stop to ask God? Or would I just go ahead and do whatever I wanted to do? It would take a ton of money. I'm just saying. I think the second one is, who authenticates you? Who justifies you? Who vindicates you? Do I lift myself up or do stupid stuff to prove that God called me? Jesus wasn't interested in proving who he was. Boy, that's a lot of confidence in a healthy way, He, he wasn't interested in justifying himself, proving himself. And I think it's a trap for us. It can be. And I think the third one is, I'll give you everything. You don't have to go to the cross. But there's really no shortcuts to avoid pain, would have really been a sacrifice. And how much the Lord valued us that he went through with losing his life. So, he wasn't in it for himself, in the sense of, no, I'll hand everything over and, life will be good. That is a trap. He had literally no skin in the game then. And that's why he came. So I think, I think the temptations accelerate the more we mature in the Lord. And spotting them, it can be hard because temptations work because they look really good. It's like that second piece of chocolate. Looks really good. But am I trying to meet my own needs? I guess that would be what you would call the lust of the flesh. Am I justifying myself? My ego, pride of life. Am I trying to avoid pain? And I think the bottom line is that he didn't use his gifts for himself. He used it for others. My mom used to call it navel gazing, when you are so focused on yourself that it becomes almost like a vicious cycle of staring at your belly button. You're not looking up, you're not looking out, you're just looking at yourself. And Jesus never did that. And he never used his gifts and his power for himself. Not that I can think of any example. And that's an amazing thought to challenge us all as we try to live our life and follow after him and come into different places of maturity. Is this a shortcut to avoid pain, to justify myself, to meet my own needs in a way that God has better plans for me? Boy, it's a lot to think about, isn't it? I think about that in my own life. And I know that pastors will say, well, he answered with the word of God, and you should too. But I think it's really good to sort of struggle through the messy middle on all of this, so that it's like whack-a-mole. As these different temptations pop up, you get faster and faster, beating them down. Anywho, just some thoughts for you on Matthew chapter 4. And I hope you have a fabulous day. All God's best.